Welcome back, everybody. This is Returning Retro. My name is Jake, the hyper-credulous interviewer, as one Reddit user observed. And yeah, I gotta be honest, with these new production retro tech devices, I am very credulous. I am super hopeful and excited about it, as I'm sure you can probably already tell. Today, we sit down with Sebastian. As those of you may have noticed with the world reveal video I had done with the Sidephone team, Sebastian, the software development lead, was on the call for about half of it and then just disappeared. That was on me. My recording software had some glitches and only about half of his stuff made it on. So he was gracious enough to offer to come and do a separate interview. So in this video, we are going to talk all about SideOS, the operating system that Sidephone is going to launch with. And I've put timestamps down. You should be able to see, I tried to get all of the major questions that I asked and the discussion points that we go over into those timestamps. So if you need to jump around a little bit, I understand it's almost an hour-long video, but a lot of great content. And yeah, thanks to Sebastian. Thanks all of you wonderful viewers and supporters of both Returning Retro as well as the Sidephone project. So let's jump into it. Here's Sebastian. I am so sorry that everything went haywire with the recording.
I think this works out. I think this works out for the best because now we're post-release. There's a lot more, I think, clarity on some of the questions. And I got a good laugh out of the one comment on the video about who was that guy who my wife thought it was the funniest thing ever. Who was that guy who didn't say anything and then disappeared?
And then just left.
And then just left. It's like, well, that was me. I did say things. They just weren't. They just didn't make it. But I'll say things now.
And I want to know from you, one of the founders, what has your impression been of the response, the community response to the big reveal?
It's been fantastic. I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic. People are super excited for it. People love the design. I mean, it was so nice even before we had a design, how excited people were about the general concept of it. But it's been awesome now that it has been released. It is even better than what a lot of people were hoping for. It came out better than even I was expecting, at the beginning of this year. Yeah. It's like, oh, wow, this is really something. 'Cause it's always a little bit, it was not stressful. I guess stressful is the right word. Leading up to it, as we were still working on the design, where it's like, man, is this going to meet people's expectations? Is this something people are going to like? Is this something they're going to be excited by? Is this something they're going to be, they're going to enjoy? They're going to be proud to carry around, And it seems like to the vast majority of people it is, and that's awesome. That's incredible to have something that we've been working on like this be so well received. I've never had an experience like that. I've released other things, but nothing that was completely custom in the way that this is. It's been awesome. It's been really encouraging too, to oh man, people are really excited for this. We're going to make it, especially on the software side, the hardware, people love that. Now the software, we're going to make that as good as it could be too. We're going to make it make it that good.
And that is one reason I'm really excited to be able to talk to you, especially in this setting as well. Like you said, post reveal, so that we can dive into some of that a little bit more, because you bring a very interesting background to the project. I know that I think barely touched on it a little bit in the first chat that you and I and Chris had, but tell me a little bit more about how Ghost Phone came to be and how that has prepared you for, and also how you're leveraging that in Sidephone.
Yeah. So Ghost Phone came out, or came to be, I think around 3 years ago now, where I had been using a flip phone for a while. I had been inspired. My uncle really helped me out with that. He got into dumb phones. It was a New Year's resolution. He was like, I'm going to use my phone less. And I was like, oh man, it's a good one. I'm going to make that one too. And then he ended up getting a dumb phone. I got a different one. And it was great. Up until it broke. I dropped it. It broke, and I was like, man. And I've always been software heavy, specifically Android heavy. I didn't have a smartphone until I was 16 or 17. Just house rules, and I was fine with it. But my oldest sister had a bunch of olds. This is when I was 14, 15. She had a bunch of. She always got Androids, always cheap ones, and they always broke. So I got into modifying them. I got an XDA forums, Lineage OS, all various kinds of ROMs, and modifying that. I've been doing that since my teenage years. So when my flip phone broke, I was like, oh man, I bet you I can make an operating system for me, put it on a Pixel, see how it goes. And I had it, and I showed, my uncle who got me into dumb phones in general. He's like, oh, hey man, can you make one of those for me too? And I was like, sure. And I spent some time on it. And I sent him one, and he was like, hey, this is really good. You could look into selling these. And I was like, oh, all right. And then obviously it took more time. It's like, okay, well, now it needs an update server. Now it needs all this stuff, which I already had some experience in. And yeah, and so then, everything sort of started to come together, started using, got newer generations of Pixels, got the supply chain set up for all that. And yeah, for most of Ghost Phone, I've been the sole developer. And that's been all kinds of operating system work, app development, and it's been a few years at this point. So yeah. And so coming to Sidephone, when Chris approached me, all that, I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This is the level of freedom that I've wanted building operating systems, where now it's our own hardware. Now it's our own device. I don't have to, with this, be limited to what Google had designed it with in mind. There's a bit more that we can do with that, especially being in software, but also on the ground floor of the hardware development.
Right.
Has been,
which I imagine makes a big difference.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's like, instead of like trying to find ways to do things, being able to go to the manufacturer and be like, hey, like, how can we do this? How is this going to work? Is this possible? That being able to have that level of connection just makes everything go a lot smoother. Again, the manufacturer having in mind what's going to happen, what the plans are for it, software-wise, has just been super helpful, and I'm just super grateful to be working on this.
Awesome. Well, I figured we could kind of do this sort of a rapid fire Q&A. Mm-hmm. Anything that you want to interject or just say, oh, and by the way, I don't want this just to be all about the questions that I have compiled. A lot of them are from me. A lot of them are from the community, places in Discord, Reddit, as well as just some people that I've reached out to via the old SMS, because I know that they've been kind of following the project. But the big thing I want to know is, right off the top, what is going to set apart Sidephone OS or SideOS, or I'm not really sure even what it's going to be called, from Android? What are going to be maybe the top, few big differences between run-of-the-mill Android, whether that's the Pixel version, the Galaxy version, you name it, and Sidephone OS?
Yeah. We'll call it SideOS tentatively. Sidephone OS doesn't matter. It'll end up being one of those two, probably SideOS.
Sure, SideOS. I like SideOS personally.
I like SideOS too. Plus, it's we have a smaller screen, so we got to fit the boot logo on. So Sidephone OS can
That's right.
SideOS.
That's a good point.
That'll fit. But yes, I mean, there's obviously a lot of differences that are going on, especially from any of the smartphones you would buy. More advanced people are going to be, or especially people using dumb phones or anything custom for a long time, are going to be more familiar with custom ROMs like Lineage OS or Graphene OS, which is a bit different and allows for more Google stuff going on. But so one of the big differences between SideOS and the operating system running on a phone that you could buy from a store is there's going to be no Google services, no Google apps, no Google services. Okay. So no Play Store, and we'll get into what kind of app store it's going to have at some point, I'm sure. But so yeah, which is good for a lot of things. There are some downsides. One of the big ones is, I know people have been asking a lot about RCS. Is it going to have RCS? Is RCS going to be a thing? I'm sure that's one of the questions coming up.
It is.
And the short answer, and the short answer, and it's related to this, is probably not, at least not at release. Just because RCS, unlike SMS, MMS, it's not really an open standard. I mean, I think technically it might be considered one, but there's no libraries we can go to, software libraries, not book libraries that we can go to. And, okay, this is how you implement RCS. There's a whole thing going on with servers that needs to happen. There are sometimes security concerns with that as well. We wanted to run our own servers for that, we'd have to get a certification from the GSM Association, and they don't really hand those out. Like Google has one, Verizon has one. We have to be a really big player to get that and run our own servers, which is unlikely. There are other ways to do it, like Beeper does it, but even Beeper does it through Google Messages. It requires, it goes through Google Messages. Yeah, RCS is super cool, but it is very Google-centric right now. And there's just not the frameworks in place to really, it's top priority for us. It is something we really, really want to have and will be continually looking at and trying to implement. But it's really tied to Google at the moment. And so not having Google services means we're not going to have Google Messages by default.
And Sebastian, I'm curious, I kind of know, but for people that maybe aren't familiar, but why? Why no Google services? Why are we doing a de-Googled OS here? What's the deal?
So there's a couple reasons. One, it's a little bit harder to get a Google certification for a smaller device, depending on the version of Android. So there was always a chance that like Google would just be like, hey, we're actually not going to let you do that. But the reason why we didn't want it from the get-go, regardless of that, is privacy largely, because Google services, they're always running in the background. They're always looking at the stuff you do. It's unfortunately just a fact. And also extended battery life. And so people, so without Google services running in the background, and you can find in the dumb phone subreddit and a lot of other places people talking about it, like especially with any sort of dumb phone or flip phone, like Catus22 is a great example, that runs Google, some form of Google Android. Once all that stuff is disabled, there's greatly increased battery life, which is super big for us. But yeah, so it's largely privacy, battery, just being more in control of the software. And with Google services, they require certain apps to be installed along with it. Again, the Play Store, which, especially with our device, would kind of negate a lot of the dumb phone-ness of it. Now it's a small phone running all of that. And it's not like we have an e-ink screen. We have a small screen, which provides some friction. But at that point, is it just a smartphone? And we personally think, yeah, at that point it kind of is. If it's full-blown Google with the Play Store, the Chrome browser.
Kind of going against the philosophy, the Sidephone.
Yeah. And oftentimes, too, they require YouTube to be installed. If you get, a Pixel or anything like that, YouTube will be there. And that, again, is like, if there is a browser you can access YouTube, maybe that's fine. But probably having YouTube pre-installed, there's a lot more, what's the word? Not qualifications, but there's a lot more rules as to what you can do with the operating system once Google Play services are installed. And they're all to benefit, frankly, Google, which makes sense. I mean, they kind of run the show on that side of things. If we're going to use their stuff, we have to include what they want us to include, but we don't want to include all that stuff. It's not the idea behind it. So yeah, the level of control over what we do and don't have on the operating system is a big one. Maybe the biggest one.
And that actually, while we're talking about Google services, I wish I should have, I want to give credit to the people that have asked these questions. This was one that I just remember a couple people asked about, so I apologize, folks. But does that mean that this will not be compatible with Android Auto?
At this time, it won't. Now, there is a way to do it. The developers working on Graphene OS have implementation in place that we can look at and that we can look into providing. They also have a way of incorporating Google services kind of in a separate layer from the Android, so we'd have to find a way to do that. It would be it would kind of negate a lot of the pros I just mentioned of not having, but I know it is a feature that a lot of people want. So it is up there with things that we will be actively looking into, but yes, Android Auto does require a lot of Google stuff. That's not impossible for us to do. Again, Graphene OS have done it. Those developers, they're absolutely brilliant, but they have found a way to do it. And so we could mirror their implementation possibly. It's going to require a lot more on the OS side, but it's something we can do. But by release time, I wouldn't count on having it there, unfortunately.
Gotcha. So similar to RCS, would it be fair to say not at launch, but definitely something you guys are going to be actively looking into going forward?
Yes, absolutely. And it's like, especially RCS, like top and Android Auto. They're both really high up there on things we want to do, but at this moment in time, I wouldn't count on it for launch. Yeah.
Okay.
It's unlikely. It's possible, but it's unlikely, and I don't want to mislead anybody as to what will be there.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, and that actually segues into another question that is similar to those, being, having talked a little bit about some of the, for lack of a better term, baggage that SideOS is going to get rid of in terms of comparing it to a regular Android operating system. What are some of the things that it will have that will be unique to, I mean, some of this may be secret. I don't know what you can talk about right now, but I am kind of, so for example, I'm assuming it will be heavily optimized for the 2.8-inch screen. Are there other either UI or UX things, or even just apps themselves that you guys are working on that will be unique to SideOS?
Yeah, especially in a dumb phone context. So obviously, yes, all the apps will be optimized for the small screen, and there'll be a heavy emphasis on making everything run as smoothly as possible. We have 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage. It should be able to run everything just fine. We're going to make sure it does, especially any system app, anything that we have complete control over will be designed specifically for Sidephone. And I've already started on that through various development methods of, so all that's going to be optimized, working well, working seamlessly. We have a lot of things that Chris and I are still in discussion with as to exactly what it's going to have, like in regards to call blocking, number blocking, some stuff like that, which Chris and I have talked about, like, oh, will there be a distraction-free mode that only allows certain contacts to call and stuff like that. That's a little bit still more nebulous, but one of the big things, and I think this is going to be very nice for dumb phone users, I think they'll appreciate it in particular, people who've used other ones, is the app market that I know I've talked about. I mean, it's app store, app market. I say app market, and it's not going to be, apps for purchase, so it's not really a store. Everything's going to be free to download at least. But I know there's been a lot of talk about, like, oh, some people are like, oh, I want a browser, and some people are like, man, I really don't want a browser. And it's the same with email. It's the same with a whole bunch of things. And I've been in the dumb phone subreddit for, I guess, a few years at this point, and it seems like that's sort of the main conflict between people, is different people living different lives, and so they just have straight up different legitimate needs as to what they want on their phone.
Yep.
And there ends up being a lot of, sometimes funny, sometimes like way too aggravated, I think, conflict over like, oh no, dumb phone should not have this and one should have that. But with the app market, it's going to have a selection of apps to install. A lot of them are going to be utilities and all that. But it will, and this is a recent implementation. I haven't fully explained how this is going to work to Chris, but we do have this. This will be there. You will be because it's based off of F-Droid. People are familiar with that. Their client software. It's not pulling from the F-Droid repos, but there's some software being used from there. But it will allow different repositories. It'll allow users to select what repositories they want to get apps from. And we'll be running all of that on our servers. So you have the app market. You can decide, there'll be a default one, but on the website, there'll be QR codes. At least this is the current implementation I have working. There'll be QR codes you can scan to add an additional repository, and then you can remove the repository if you want from the app market itself. So maybe you don't want, so maybe there's one repository you can add, and that has your browser, that has your email, that has all the things like that, right? So you can add that, you scan the code on the website from the phone, boom, you now have access to all those apps and you can install them if you want. If you don't want them, you simply remove the repository and then you can bring it back any other time you want. And so you can imagine packages will be available. Be a very minimalist, utilities driven one, that's your voice recorder, your two-factor authentication, all of that. And there'll be, one for people who do want the browser, who do maybe want calendar sync and things like that would require a browser. And so users will, I think this is super cool. Users will be able to select with some degree of granularity what apps they want to be able to install. Now, obviously, I know it's still not a perfect implementation for everyone. I know there's some people who absolutely, don't want any sort of way to install a browser or things like that. But we're hoping that adds enough friction for people who don't want certain apps, while also allowing people who do want those apps access to them. Because if you have to go to the website, scan the code to install them, you're already on a device with a browser. So, there's something I think in there. But yeah, I think that's going to be one of the coolest features. Maybe it's just the one I'm most proud of. I don't know.
Well, and I think that's really cool. And this whole concept of friction, for viewers or listeners that aren't familiar, it's this idea of adding either extra steps or extra requirements in interfacing with your hardware or your software in an effort to make your use more deliberate and less distracting. And so I think as you're describing that, I'm like, that is so genius in order to add those repositories or those app sources, I guess you could call them. Yeah, you can't just go in and start typing. Like you'd have to, got to go get on a browser on, a desktop or laptop or whatever, scan the QR code, now have access. Like it just makes it so much more of an effort required to do it. I think that's really, really neat. So yeah, I'm excited. So that's another one. And we had kind of discussed this a little bit on the footage that disappeared of yours.
Lost footage.
Side loading. This has been something a lot of people have. So people, I'll just put on Aurora Store and be able to put whatever I want. And I'm like, but will you be able to? So can you talk to that a little bit? Are there going to be some things that you can side load, some things that will be restricted, or is it just going to kind of be Wild West? If you know how to side load, you'll be able to do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's a little bit up in the air. We have the ability to prevent, again, that's something I've also worked on the Ghost Phone for a while now, is having stuff built into the package manager of the device that prevents certain packages from being installed. We can do that. It's still, that's one of the things that's still up for discussion. It's unclear. It's unclear. There's always that fine line that we have to walk that kind of leads into the App Store and all of that, where like we want people to have a distraction-free experience, but we do want people to have the freedom as well. So really, it's like, if you're side loading anyway, does it matter then? Because then what we run into, and this is a concern, this might be, I think right now where we're at, you will probably be allowed to side load almost anything. Just to sort of leave it open. Only because, and again, this could change. This is one of the things that could change. We haven't fully set this in. But as soon as we start to lock in, there's no way to do this, there's no way to do that, and somebody finds a way, people will be upset. People will be mad at us. It's just what's going to happen, because people buy a device with expectations and they find a way around it. And I mean, that is, I think, true of almost any dumb phone. Like, I know in a lot of them that don't have browser or anything like that, you can access the Android layer and you can technically do it. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of friction there, but it can be done. And so as soon as we go into the territory of, oh, you can't do this, we better make sure that you really can't. Or then it's not, then not that would be a lie from us, because we really tried and we really thought that you couldn't, but it gets us into some murkier waters where we maybe don't want to be as a company. Right. With advice, where it's like, oh, we made this promise that there was no way to do this. Oh, but you could do it from the terminal of your computer if you know how to do it with ADB, because it's actually fairly difficult to block that on a device, while still, because of the way software upload process works when it's being flashed, all kinds of very technical things get involved. And especially for me as a developer, I usually know the ways around it, and I wouldn't want to be caught in a situation where it's like, oh shoot, we actually can't fully stop somebody from doing this, but we're telling them that they can't. And so, yeah, it will probably be a little bit more open, actually quite a bit more open on the side loading side, especially with the app market. We think there'll kind of be no need to. At some point, it's, do we just let people do that? You know what I mean? I'm getting a little
I can see
with my words.
You could find yourself between a rock and a hard place real quick, because especially if you made commitments that you fully, according to the knowledge at the time, expected to be able to live up to, and then all of a sudden, oops, some 14-year-old figured out how to crack the or
exactly.
Whatever the case may be.
Exactly. Yeah. That's just a situation we don't want to be. And we think with the app market and all the things like that, it just won't be necessary.
And I imagine with the size of the screen, so many apps you wouldn't even really, I mean, even if you did sideload it, getting into it, you might be like, oh, this is not a great experience.
Exactly. The device itself is built within that. Like on the Ghost Phone, there's no browser. There's not going to be on that, because it's a smartphone form factor. It's based on Pixel hardware. And so then yeah, there's zero friction once you have it there. For anything you want to do with that. But with the Sidephone, it's built into the hardware of, oh, okay, this isn't like, woohoo, I'm going to do all these things on it. It's designed purposely to limit that in some capacity. And so we can allow more things like that, like the whole browser discussion and all that is open because of the form factor.
Gotcha. So speaking of hardware, this is a question of mine. Someone may have asked it somewhere, but I haven't seen it yet. Biometrics. Is there going to be, I don't think I saw a fingerprint scanner. Is there going to be any kind of face unlock, anything in that regard?
There's going to be no biometrics.
Gotcha.
Yeah, with this particular edition. And it's possible we could add them. There could be a biometrics tile, I think. I think that's technically possible. There are some limitations I know Chris has talked about. I don't think that falls under them. I mean, he can correct me and I can put a comment down if I'm wrong. So that could be, but at release and, focus, yeah, probably no biometrics. You'll be able to input like your PIN from the keypad.
Right. So you have a lock screen.
You have a lock screen. You'll have a lock screen. It'll work just like any other Android with a lock screen. Biometrics would be super cool. But yeah, we're just too restricted on just sort of the ways to implement that, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, and I think honestly, in my own experience, that to me is just another one of these layers of friction that we talk about, where, you know, with a fingerprint or a face unlock, it's boom, you're there, boom, you're there, boom, you're there. Whereas a pattern or a pin or whatever, it just adds a little bit more inconvenience to accessing that device, and hopefully would help you be less distracted by it. At least that's the way that I kind of view it. So,
yeah.
Let's see. Okay, got to do a little shout out to a Discord friend. Will it have any Google services whatsoever? Being based on AOSP, will there be any link to Google at all?
No, nothing Google. No Google whatsoever. The browser will not be a Google browser. Search engine will probably be DuckDuckGo by default, I think, for the browser. But yeah, nothing Google. Won't be anywhere on the device. There will be no telemetry between the device and us either. This is going to be just none of that. And yeah, no Google. Because if we have one Google thing, we have to have them all. And we're not going to do that. So yeah, there'll be nothing. There'll really be no weird things running in the background. It's at this moment, there isn't going to be any sort of sign-in required on the device. Again, you'll have your lock screen, you'll have all that. But there is no like, oh, you need an account to log into this or do that. It'll be very similar to the flip phones of yore, where it's just, oh, it is a phone. Like, you take this and it is a phone. And again, you can lock it. You can do all sorts of things like that, but it's not linked to any account. Now, apps can be linked to your account. And so you could have like a cloud backup that's linked to you, you know, that you sign into, you know, Proton Drive or anything like that. That you can do. Like, you'll be able to do that, but the device itself will not have any sort of overarching sign-in.
And does that include the app market? So, for example, downloading apps, updating apps, that type of thing. I know, you know, on the Apple and the Google, you have to be signed in. But
yeah, no, you won't have to be. You will not have to be signed in, and you won't be able to sign in. There'll be no account. It's very. I would say bare bones. I don't want people to think that it's like it's going to look terrible or anything like that. But it's very, I guess pure. It's
sure
going to be very open and honest. It's like, these are apps, and then when you get an update, it's like, okay, these are the apps that have updates. Very simple, very, very clean, I think. Personally.
I love it.
But yeah,
okay.
So none of that required. None of that will be required. Again, it's maybe something that we could look into at some point. There might be a version. This would probably be like a Sidephone V2, you know, or something like that, where there is. I know Light has it. I know there's some other companies where they do have something, and that allows you to manage online on your dashboard and all that. And there's convenience about that, but we won't have that. At this time, and most likely not for this device. Just especially given if it's sold without that, we don't want to add that to people. Add that to the device. It's like, oh, no, I need an account. Yep. All that. We would like to just avoid that entirely.
Cool. Okay, another one a user submitted. This is from Reddit. Retro Reimagined had asked, can you give any specifics about the QWERTY keyboard teased in the recent graphic, and will the phone launch with it? Also, what kind of battery life can we expect?
All good questions. QWERTY, we would like to launch with the QWERTY. So right now, the one tile that we do have that will be launching it, we want to be very clear on this, is the T9. That is the tile that is actively being worked on by the manufacturer, and we want to launch with more than one tile. That is the guaranteed one. That is the one that is guaranteed at this moment in time, is the T9 tile. And there will 100% be others. But at launch, that is the guaranteed one. We're gonna absolutely, we already are, I guess is the way to say it, working on more tiles, but that's the guaranteed one for right now. The QWERTY one, I can't really give more information on it since it's not at the same level of development as the T9 one is.
Sure.
So it's, yeah, it'll look like I'm with you on the SureType, Jake. I want the SureType.
Yes.
That gets a little bit trickier, just because of the way Android works and the way it handles keyboards. That's going to have to be some custom software, because, you know, Android, super easy to be like, hey, here's a keyboard, because it recognizes the tiles as keyboards. The ones we've suggested, it recognizes them as keyboards. Here's a keyboard, and this is its layout, and then it's like, oh, cool, yeah, I know what to do with this. And Android knows what to do with QWERTY, you know, regular QWERTY or QWERTY style keyboards, you know, single button, single input keyboards, and it knows what to do with T9 and a few others out of the box, you know, within the operating system. With SureType, since it's like 2 characters per, that's kind of in between both, and it would probably end up being me write custom code to handle that.
You'd have to,
which I'm into. If I have the resources, I have the time. I would like that. It would work very well with the form factor. It's going to be a little bit of a toss-up. Like, that is something that we can totally do. It's going to be a toss-up between that or a QWERTY, because we do want a text input in some form that isn't a T9. And SureType would be super cool, and it would work perfectly in that form factor. It's just writing the software to be able to do that. It's not handled natively by Android.
Right. Well, and that's something that I've, as I've engaged with people, I've actually kind of been surprised. I thought that I was the only person left alive that likes the SureType, but in YouTube and Reddit, I've seen, SureType. One thing that I personally worry about is, someone I even responded to their comment like, I'm 6 foot, 215 pounds. I grew up on a cattle ranch. Like, my fingers are huge, Sebastian. And I think of like the width of Sidephone with a full QWERTY. I mean, some people would probably be able to do it and love it, but I would try to if that's, what is available. But I'm just like remembering those, dude, I could get smoking with the SureType. I didn't have to look. Anyway, so I'm glad.
No, I get it. I don't think my hands are as big as yours. I never worked on a cattle ranch, but I'm 6'1", if that means anything.
Oh, there you go.
I have this little guy here that my neighbors gave me when I helped them move in. They were like, you do stuff with phones. They gave me this. I was like, all right, awesome, perfect. But I was just messing around with it. And yeah, these are a little small. These are a little small. I was trying with it. I'm like, I could get there. These are a little small. And I don't know exactly what size we'd be looking at. That is the thing with the QWERTY and why I don't want to say we'll have it at launch. We would love to. Again, that's one of those things, top priority. A lot of the stuff's going to get more clear in May, as we get into May, as we actually, especially once I get sort of the early prototypes and stuff to start doing with the software and the sizing and all that. A lot of stuff, which is something I meant to preface this with, like, a lot of stuff is going to get a lot more clear very soon. But that's a big thing with the QWERTY, is we want to make sure it's actually usable. We want to make sure you could type on it, it makes sense to, with any sort of configuration we do as well. Because it won't be able to, be a full wide keyboard, so now it's going to be, shorter and we'll find a good system for it, but it has to be really
and I was going to show. So I've got my Bold 9700 here, and this is significantly wider than Sidephone. And these, I got to where I could be pretty good at typing with this, but these are very small. I mean, these are much smaller than what I feel like a lot of BlackBerry people even now, like, it's much smaller than the Key 1 or the Key 2, much smaller than the Q10 or the Classic. Even the 9900 was a little bit bigger than this. And so anyway, I'm all for it. I see why people want it, but as someone that has kind of lived on both sides of the big shift to these huge phones, I'm like, guys, a full QWERTY on something that's good. Anyway, sorry. So the other thing, just to kind of keep moving it along, but I'm glad you're with me on the SureType.
Yes.
Battery life. So we talked about this a little bit. What have you guys done any? I don't as much as you can. I know you don't have prototypes yet.
It's fairly difficult, without a prototype, and without really a clear analog that exists, without any sort of real comparison to. There are some phones that have a battery around that size, but they are also running Google services, which is a pretty massive drain on battery on most devices. So it'll definitely last through a full day. We're like that. That's a guarantee that I can make. Outside of that, it's really going to be testing. We would like to see. And we can make some optimizations on the OS side. We'd like to see a couple days, obviously. It's, 1,800 milliamp hours is a reasonable battery size, especially with the smaller screen. A lot of it's going to depend on just various other factors like RF, signal, whether it's searching, Wi-Fi, all that. So I don't want to make any promises on that end, but it will be better for sure than something like oh gosh, what was the really small one? Palm? I think that correctly, that had the notoriously bad battery life, because that was like a 600 milliamp hour battery.
It's like a 27-minute battery life. No, I'm just kidding. I was exaggerating, but it was. I remember it being notorious, not even a full day use.
Yeah, and so we're looking for. I can at least say, at a minimum, standard battery life. At a minimum, it's not going to be draining while you're using it, type of thing. Sure. Given the screen size and the battery, but all we have really right now are estimates. Again, that's something that we should be able to clear up next month. We'll actually really get some real world testing in and let people know. But yeah, given from our talks with the manufacturer, with the chipset, battery, all that, it should be good. It should be acceptable. I'm not going to promise anything, again, at this juncture, like a week. It's not going to be like that with an LCD screen and, all the things going on. It's not going to be, unfortunately, like the old Nokias where it just lasts forever. It's just very difficult to do that with 4G. It's kind of why phones haven't been able to do that, because there's just so much more power required just for it to exist and for it to connect to networks. Because the phone, if you're getting calls, it always has to be connected to the network.
True.
And so 4G just requires more power to do that. But I don't know what other word to use then. It should be reasonable, and we'll let you know.
Gotcha. Well, and I think too, and this is something that I've seen pop up a lot, and I know it's kind of been addressed, but just here in this setting, will people be able to, if they want to, use this as a standalone device? Will it be able to, or is it going to be something like battery life or functionality or whatever? You would want to have a primary device to use alongside this.
Yeah. No, it should be, despite the name Sidephone, it will be daily drivable. That's my intended use case, and here I am, the developer. Again, if you need all the things a smartphone has, then no. But that's kind of the thing with dumb phones anyway. I was going to say paradox, but I guess it's not. Maybe it's paradox, but if you needed to do absolutely everything what you're looking for is a smartphone, but if you need two-factor authentication, if you need to call people, if you need to text people, if you want to listen to music, all the basics and sort of like the basic plus, the basic premium things that people need, again, up to including things like a web browser, all that, it'll be perfectly fine as a daily driver. Again, especially if you're going in with dumb phone expectations, yes, absolutely. And we're looking to get people who this is their first dumb phone. We want it to work well for them and all that. So we'll absolutely be usable as your device, as your daily driver. It's always recommended with a dumb phone that you have a computer or some other device around. Sure. That's always kind of, I think, the caveat with dumb phones is there's some expectation of there being another device available. Even if you want to, if you need to get certain things to log into certain apps or whatever, first time, like logging into a Gmail account or whatever, how often, they require a code sent. I mean, I guess you get the text code. But you know what I'm saying, where sometimes it is nice to have a computer with any dumb phone. I'm trying to think even like light phone, the dashboard on the computer. You obviously can't access that from the phone, all sorts of things like that. But yes, I guess short answer, yes. You can use it day to day. It'll be fine. With the caveat being slightly dependent on your use case. If you're looking for a smartphone, it is not a smartphone, but it's going to be pretty darn good.
Awesome. Well, that's you had mentioned something there that I think is relatable to we had two users that had pretty much the same question. So shout out to Cats Are Cute 2020 and Tech Beeson. Unlockable bootloader.
Unlockable bootloader is unfortunately a no. It is something we really wanted, but with the MediaTek chipsets, which are just what we're using, it's what we have to use. Anything else, Qualcomm or anything that would maybe allow that is prohibitively expensive at this moment in time. MediaTek just doesn't really allow that.
Gotcha.
Really,
and I had wondered about that myself. Is what is it? Because I know some devices do have a very easily unlockable bootloader, and some of them don't. Not really having any major background in software. That's what it is. Then it's the chipset, some kind of licensing restrictions or something.
Because in order to unlock the bootloader, or really in order to be able to unlock it and do anything with it, I guess is also because oh gosh, I'm trying to think. What do I have? I got a while back, just like as a sample, just to see what I could do with. This was before Sidephone. One of the Ulefone or one of the other, like Chinese manufacturers, typically for use within China, it did allow me to unlock the bootloader, just didn't allow me to do anything else. It was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll unlock it. What are you gonna do? Nothing, because you also have to give people, if they're going to do anything meaningful with it, which is pretty much always a different operating system, custom operating system. We really wanted the operating system to be open source. That is what we wanted. It's just not possible. We have to give people a lot of the device firmware, a lot of the vendor files and stuff like that, and MediaTek's licenses don't allow us to do that. So even if you could unlock it, if it was like something you could toggle so it's technically unlocked, there's not really going to be anything that anybody can do with that, unfortunately. Again, maybe a different device into the future. It's something we really want. It fits with the ethos of the company.
Right. But
at this juncture, it's just not something that we can do.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, which pains me. It pains me very much. I want everybody to know.
So let me, even while we are talking here, Sebastian, I've got another couple of questions coming in. Okay. So this one is from Art Crimes. How will activation work what are some recommended cell phone providers if you are establishing a new phone number?
Okay, so this one is another one that's a little not up in the air. We haven't, again, we're working on certifications with different carriers. It should be as simple as putting your SIM card in. So we're not going to support eSIM at this time. Again, that's kind of bound up with some Google stuff. That's not quite open source. So basically, yeah, you're going to pop your SIM card in. And that might require some, depending on the carrier. I know Verizon can be a little bit funkier. I personally have used on the Ghost phone. This is not like an endorsement. This is not an advertisement or anything. I've used US Mobile. They're fine. I can switch in and out as it goes. Again, this is me as a US individual, personal experience. But if you already have your SIM card, it should go right into the device and be fine. Again, if your carrier requires you to let them know that you've added a new device, with the IMEI number or anything like that, you'll have to enter that there. It's going to be per carrier. Again, and I only have US experience with carriers, but I know that's typically how that works. It's going to be like any other phone, any other smartphone, where it'll have an IMEI number that identifies it to the cellular network, and you can give that number where needed to your carrier. But it shouldn't be anything weird. It shouldn't be anything non-standard for people who are already who already have a phone and at some point had to put a SIM card in it, I guess is the way to put it.
And we did discuss, now this is coming back to me, on the reveal video, Chris had mentioned that if there is enough interest from the community, actually getting carrier certification for some of the,
yes.
AT&T I know is a tricky one, Verizon as well. So that'll, I think, help with that. But for the most part, what you're saying, if you have an active SIM, just pop it in and you should be good to go in most cases.
Yes. And that's, again, what I know now. If that changes, we will let people know. But before, and a lot of the stuff is like, before pre-orders, before we do anything like that, before we take anybody's money, we will have an answer for you.
Right.
But yeah, right now, it's not going to be anything particular. It's not going to be anything particularly weird.
Gotcha.
And so, carriers to recommend. I don't know at this point in time. That's something we'll test and maybe we'll get some user feedback on. Like, oh, it works really well with this, seamless with that. But right now, yeah, it should work. It should work with pretty much any carrier. But that's going to require just a bit more time and a bit more testing to figure out. You will have on the website when we're able to, like, oh, we've tested it with these carriers and it works with these carriers. If you want a good experience, these carriers. And then, you go to the carrier's website, you'll get your SIM card mailed to you, pop it in, activate it. That should be fine. But yeah, I just can't make any recommendations at this point because we don't have any models that are already running the software, connecting to networks, anything like that. So it's like, I can make some guesses, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want to lead people astray at this moment in time.
No worries. So this next one, Sebastian, this is awesome. And I have to thank Fluffy_ad5877. What assurances will we have that the phone/OS will be supported years into the future?
We will have control over the updates, all that. We will keep it updated. And we're not going to have... So I guess because people are thinking like worst case scenario, they bought the phone and then we go under. And then Sidephone no longer exists. And now you have a phone. What can you do with it? Will it work? There's always I know with Pebble, there's things going on with that where things are kept alive after. And I don't know if at that point we could release the source code. I don't know. That would be a nice gesture. There's nothing on the device. There's no services, again, at this moment in time, planned that would stop if Sidephone no longer existed. So you get the phone. It has all the stuff. It's a 4G device. It should work for a long... the hardware should be relevant for a number of years into the future. And there's no services that require us to exist, again, at this moment in time. Maybe there'd be a few things, like the GPS app is going to be, we're going to most likely be using Here Maps APIs for all that. And so then if we're not doing this and we're not paying for the API use or anything like that, maybe that would stop. But yeah, so worst case scenario, and I don't think this is going to happen. The Sidephone goes out, the device is still going to work. There's going to be there's going to be no Spotify with the car thing, literally called the car thing that they had, where they sent out an update and bricked them all. Still not, because they didn't want to keep it connected to their services and all that. There's none of that on Sidephone.
I did not know that's how that went down.
That's how that went down. Yeah,
I knew that it happened, but I didn't know that's how it went down. Oh.
They OTA bricked them. I'm 90% now. Okay, now I got to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they did. And people still found ways around it. And I'm sure that clever people, again, like Pebble is a great example. Now they have the new ones coming out and all that, where people were still kind of finding ways to do that. But yeah, I guess the biggest assurance is there's nothing on it that would stop if we stopped. Once you have the device and once you have the software, it will still be functional. There's no core functionality. Again, there's no services in the background. It's like, oh man, isn't keeping this up anymore. They can't do this. And it goes down, which I assume that's what they're asking, right?
Let's and in case they're asking kind of the flip of that, what is actually the plan going forward in terms of security updates or even just OS updates themselves?
Yeah.
What's the plan there? Assuming maybe not the worst case scenario, but sort of
the best case scenario.
If the best case, or even just the ship keeps sailing scenario. How's that look?
Yeah. So we have really no plans at this point to move to a separate device. We have this device. We have the Sidephone. There's been a lot of work going into this with the just we're not gonna and now here's version 2 and version 1 we're just gonna completely forget about, and none of that's gonna go on. Again, this isn't official. I don't want to say that this is official, but I know Chris has talked about this. We're looking at 5 years, looking at keeping things going for 5 years. And the nice thing is we are going to be in charge of the updates in the update servers. And so even if Google were to stop supporting, any of the security patches and stuff for Android that they still do for our version of Android, which is probably going to be Android 12. That's what it's looking like. Full transparency. Android 12, not the newest. Unfortunately, it's what we have to do with the chipset and the manufacturer. But there are security updates for that. We will have the software, and we will still be able to manage that, backport things to that, and send out the updates ourselves. We're not reliant on anybody else to do that. So it's like, oh, Google doesn't support this anymore, because that's what happens with a lot of smartphone manufacturers. Is they're like, oh man, Google stopped kind of doing this, and we're not putting the work in to keep this going. But this is our product, and this is what we do, so we will keep that going. And feature updates too are something we can always send out. We can always send out a feature update, things like that. It's like, oh man, got left behind. I guess the assurance is we're in charge of all the updates. It's our software. It's our operating system. That's one of the other perks of it being AOSP, Android Open Source Project, is we have total control over that. So we're going to keep that going. We're going to keep adding, new useful things, fixing anything that we see issues with, because the ball is entirely in our court, and we want to make it the best possible. I hope I answered that well.
Yeah, I think so. And I honestly, I think that there's a very refreshing. In fact, I even messaged Chris about this, kind of taking this approach of sort of a 5-year versus a annual release cycle. I'm almost in there. It's okay, so this is like a gaming console type of a thing where you've got this period where there are refinements to the software, there are more enhancements, there are more obviously games for gaming systems. But in this, whether it's the tiles, which I'm so excited about the tiles, Sebastian, I cannot even. but also even just refinements to the software or app availability, or some of the I don't want to say digital well-being, but maybe more like mindfulness or digital intentionalism aspects to the software. I know Chris has talked about that quite a bit. I think when you have a 5-year cycle as opposed to an annual cycle, you just have so much more room for refinement and making it such a fine-tuned, well-sharpened experience compared to some of these other ones. Not to name any names that they release, and then the software that came on it is what you have the entire time it can turn on.
Exactly, and that's what I think the coolest things about the tiles too is there could be an improvement to a tile within the core device's lifespan. So it's there's a T9, possibly find a better way to do a T9. Maybe there's a better way to do it. Maybe we make it click a little bit better, this or that. It would still be compatible, as same format. So the fact that the tiles can be added and all that, it allows for super expansion. There could be so many different tiles as time goes on, and so many different use cases for it. Again, in conjunction with the app market, which I think kind of has a sort of tileness to it. There's a sort of modularity throughout the whole thing. Maybe we have a repository, or used a better term, or I think an easier to approach term, app source. Maybe that has some sort of emulation apps or something like that, and that goes with a retro gaming tile, which I'm sure would be very exciting to a lot of people. Things like that. We can keep things updated and fresh and expand while also keeping the core device the way it is. I think it's just a better way to do it, I think.
And that actually that does one question that I've had, because I've kind of seen, I don't know if I would call it confusion, but one thing I maybe wanted to clear up or see if you could clear up a little bit is there isn't going to be any functionality of the phone that is going to be locked behind the requirement of purchasing additional tiles. Or will there? I mean, outside of obviously the hardware of the tile itself, but in order to play music, you're not going to have to buy the music tile that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's not going to be like, oh man, in order to use this, I need this tile. We don't want to force, I'm not even going to say incentivize, we don't want to force people to have to buy another accessory to use the phone that they already purchased, to use it in the way that they want. Yeah, that's not going to be a thing, and that's not going to happen. Like, oh man, to use the camera, you need the camera tile. Like
right.
No,
exactly.
Completely outside of the ethos, anything we're working on. No, it's your phone. You bought it. You can do all the things you want to do on it, and then if you want to do some things more conveniently or you want to do them better, the tiles introduce different ways of interacting with the device, and maybe a better way of interacting with the device. Again, like maybe some apps only make sense with a certain tile or are best, but it has a touchscreen. So it's not like, oh man, there's no way to use this. Like that would be kind of difficult. And we don't want to do anything like that where it's like, oh man, you need this for a core feature. Yeah. Oh, people are going to lose it when we release the RCS tile. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
There it is.
And that's an example of we wouldn't do that. Yeah,
exactly.
That's not a thing we would do. And again, if it was necessary, maybe. Again, if it's necessary for this app to work to have this tile, sure. But that would also be so tied up, I think, into the use of the tile and would probably be niche enough, it would make sense. But yeah, it's not, oh, you need this tile to do this thing, where it turns into a weird, I'm trying to think of a company that does do that. But it turns into this weird thing where like, oh, if you want to do this, not going to do that.
Yeah, something that the phone is totally capable of without the tile, but you restrict it to be able to be used only after purchase. No, and that's kind of what I was like, guys, I don't think that's how this is going to work. So anyway, awesome. Well, hey, Sebastian, that's all I've got. Is there anything else, in terms of the software or the launch or the pre-order deposit stuff that's coming? I mean, anything you want to let viewers or listeners to know about now that we're, here post world reveal?
Yeah, I guess I just want to assure people too, we're putting all the time and effort into this. It will work. And I saw a lot of questions too, will it have hotspot? Yes, it will have hotspot. We'll be able to do this since we are basing it off, regular Android, again, without Google services. So I know some people might get a little bit confused as to, okay, what's an Android feature? What's a Google Android feature? But if regular Android has it, or if something like Lineage OS has it, because it is AOSP based, we'll have it. So hotspotting, it's going to have that. That's a core Android feature. Some people were like, oh, will it have D-pad navigation? That's built into Android. So if we do have a D-pad tile, you will be able to navigate with that. All sorts of things like that. And I want to make, this isn't a broad sweeping promise, but if it's like, oh man, can it do this basic Android thing? Can I hook it up to my computer? Can I move files to it? Can I do things like that? The answer is yes. If it's a very basic function, the answer is 95% yes. I can't think of anything that it wouldn't be able to do. Again, unless it's something like form factor limited. Maybe, I don't know about projecting your screen to a TV. That's the thing that some Androids can do. I don't know about that one. So some of the more niche ones, or might start to get a little bit more interesting. But again, if it's oh, can I transfer files? Can I can I put my music files on it? Can I hotspot? Can I do all those things? The answer is yes. Outside of that, I know some people were a little bit upset about the lack of the headphone jack.
Yeah.
And I
myself kind of include. I got to be honest with you, Sebastian. I understand why, but it's still like a dart to the heart. Yeah.
And it feels bad. It feels a little bit bad not having it. Because I know some people are like, oh man, it's so easy. Why not have it? Or it's already, it's already not the thinnest device anybody's ever seen. Why isn't it just in there? But a lot of that has to do with just components, the way components are sold. And we don't, it's prohibitively expensive. People are like, oh, it's thick. Isn't there room in there to put it? There really isn't going to be, just because we really wanted it, and Chris in particular pushed for it. It just isn't going to, it just doesn't work with the current design. Even though you could take it, you could take your Sidephone, you could look, and you'd be like, oh, I bet you they fit one right here. And it'd be sticking out. The way the electronics have to be, the way the battery has to be, because a lot of this stuff, it can't, This is just stuff like battery, like to do
Well, I was going to say, yeah, it could fit right. It could fit right here, but then where are you going to move all the stuff that's already right there so that it could fit right there? Yeah.
Yeah, and with RF, with radio frequencies and all the stuff that has to be considered, it unfortunately wasn't feasible. It will work with dongles. I know people are mad about that. I know people hate the word dongle, but you know, I have a dongle. I didn't have this as a prop. This is just on my desk. But yeah, so I wanted to like we do have very legitimate reasons. I know a lot of smartphone manufacturers did just kind of get rid of them. It is something we really wanted to have. Unfortunately, it's just not something we could make work with the device. It's one of the sacrifices we had to make.
Right. I mean, I'm crossing my fingers that this is just an insane success, and that 5 years from now when V2 comes out, it's got the headphone jack, it's got the SD card slot, it's got all these wonderful things that, because a lot of it, again, not to put words in you guys' mouth, but I imagine a lot of it is kind of cost related. If you had the ability to throw mountains of cash at a manufacturer, they could probably do things that they otherwise can't. So
and a lot of it's tied to sales volume too, because that's going to determine years down the road, that's going to determine what's viable. Again, somebody had compared it to they're like, oh, Apple was able to do this with an iPod, and they were able to make it so much thinner. One. Yeah. I responded to that comment a little bit before this meeting. I was like, but I mean, one, it's a smaller circuit board because it's not a phone, it's an iPod. It has to do fewer things. It doesn't have to worry about antennas, for 4G or anything like that. But also Apple, they can go and they're like, hey, battery manufacturer, make one exactly this size and exactly this shape.
Exactly.
And they plop it in and it works great. Well, it's like, okay, well, who makes batteries and what do you guys have that we can make work? Which is just a different conversation. And so, yeah, but Apple also could be like, oh man, we're going to sell, it might actually have been 1 million of these. I don't know. 1 million of those. Well, for us, it's like, okay, we're dealing with 1,000 and, 10,000. So it's just smaller. But if a lot of people buy, people spread the word, people get the hype going, it's like, oh, wow, we can, either with this or a future generation, we know that we can sell this many. We're able to have different conversations with different component manufacturers about, because a lot of times too, they're just like, hey, yeah, we'll make that for you. This is a big thing. But you need to order 50,000 or sometimes up to 100,000. It's like, okay, so we need to sell at least that, we need to make at least that many devices, which isn't something we're looking at right now. We hope to, we would love to, but we're looking at 10,000, which we've talked about, that coming down the pipe. So yeah, if people, if it's really good and people like it and people spread the word, they get other people to, we can start to justify bigger moves like that and bigger plays and make a better product for everybody. We're hoping Sidephone, the one coming out, is going to last people a long time. That it's going to be relevant for a long time. That's been the whole point of the design behind it. That is the plan. That's what we're working very hard on, is that this version carries us and everybody else a very long way.
Thank you so much for joining me. Again, apologies that the original recording during the reveal cut you off halfway through, and we're having these strange halfway through he disappear moments. But it's a pleasure having had you on, folks. Please visit sidephone.com, sign up for the email newsletter for updates. They are very active over on Reddit. It's reddit.com/r/sidephone. As well, if you enjoy the stuff that you're finding here, we'd love to have you over on Returning Retro as well. Go ahead and subscribe, and we have our own Reddit page as well. So Sebastian, it's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, Jake, this has been great.